Good morning, everyone. I know that it's been a little while since I posted up the first video in our series on reloading, called "The Day After Brass," where we went through the process of collecting, sorting, and tumbling all the brass in preparation for reloading. This video is going to be a follow-up to that. It's going to basically discuss the press and the components and just the next step. Then we'll actually do a third video showing the process. So sit back, relax, and hopefully you enjoy the video. So this is the press. You'll notice it's a little different than the one in my other video. This is the Hornady Auto Progressive, and I've actually got it all set up to do 380 auto. The first thing that you have to do is the case plate to make sure you have the right size casing. For 380 auto, you're going to use a number 16. And then you have to set up the dies. In this particular case, we have a 3-die set. We have the first die right here, the first die is the decapper and resizer. This will pop out the old primer and resize the outside of the brass so that we can fit it to the chamber. The next die is the expander die, and it basically puts a slight flare to the neck. And then we have an empty space. This could be used for the powder measure if we were using another die for seating the bullet, and then the fourth die would be for crimping. We have, in this Redding die set, we have this die which does the job of both. It will seat the bullet to the proper depth, and then it will apply a slight crimp just to hold the bullet in place. Basically, the way you set it up is you just start with an empty die or an empty case plate, bring it up, bring the die down till it touches the case plate, drop the die, drop the case plate, and then just make your fine adjustments from there. So you get everything all set up, and then you're ready to go. So the next step is to actually stage the brass. In this case, we've got 380 auto with spent primers. We've tumbled it, we've sorted it out. In some applications, you would actually want to do a case lube. This is some Hornady case lube. You don't actually need to do this with pistol unless your dies are a bit tricky to get down over the casing. But with that, you would just take a little bit of it and just wipe it on the outside of the casing. That way it allows the die to go down over the brass. Stage your bullets, and in this case we have a formula from our Hornady reloading book that we've figured out the proper powder measure. So basically what you would do is weigh out about 10 pans worth of powder. In our case, we're going to use 0.298 grains. It can fluctuate a point or two from the whole number, but not that big of a deal. Then you have a digital caliper. The digital caliper will help you to measure the overall length of the bullet as it's seated in. 0.98 is the head gap. Then you have primers. I use CCI primers. I've just seemed to have had better luck with those. Basically you have to, I'm not going to do everything, but basically you put out some primers. You have to flip them over so that the shiny side is up, or the surface that the firing pin strikes. So we're just going to do a few of those. Then we're going to take this piece, which is a tool used to load the primers, into the press. You just stab them here like this, collect up all your primers. We're just going to do a few. The last one will always get stuck in the tip, so I just use a little nylon rod. Very gently push that one down through, making sure all of the primers are in the tube. You invert it, you bring it over to the press, stick it there, and then pull the pin. This will allow all the primers to drop down into the press, where they will then be fed into this spot. I don't know if you can see it very well or not, but it's an opening. You bring it up. As you bring it up, it pops the old primer. It follows down through this tube into my dumpster. It'll feed a new primer into there. And then as the case plate advances, after you've deprimed it, it will line up the hole and pop a new primer in. The next stage will go up, and it will go into the expander die, where it will flare the neck. Bring it back down. I have to advance it twice because I have the empty slot here. Bring it back up again. It will do the powder drop. As the case plate comes up, the top of the brass hits a cam underneath, shoves it up. The linkage will raise, the powder measure will flip, and we've calibrated this to the proper powder drop. After you bring it back down, when we first get started, I'll pull the casing out, bring it over here, pour the powder into the pan, make sure the measurement is correct, then I'll feed it back up in, drop it back into the top of the powder measure. Do that 10 times, take an average as long as it's dumping the right weight of powder. I'll go ahead and start cycling brass. After the powder drop, it goes up to this die where it will seat and crimp the bullet so that we can end up with a properly made 380 auto. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually get everything set up, and once I get the powder measured, take the average drops, and we'll read it, and then we'll proceed to make some bullets. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.